On the night my parents were kidnapped, my policeman brother was supposed to accompany a fake rich heiress to go bungee jumping. I didn't stop him. I decisively called the police to arrange the ransom. In my previous life, my brother didn't accompany the fake rich heiress to save our parents. As a result, during her bungee jump, the rope snapped, and she fell off the cliff. Her body was never recovered. Afterwards, my brother remained silent. Unexpectedly, on my birthday, he drugged me and took me to that very cliff. It was you who orchestrated the kidnapping. You fought for attention to this extent. You're a demon. Emma is dead, and you shouldn't be alive either. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day my parents were kidnapped. This time, my brother did not initiate a rescue. Instead, he rushed to the fake rich heiress. But later, he regretted it so deeply he nearly went insane. Chapter 1. I suddenly opened my eyes, my forehead drenched in sweat. My heart pounded wildly in my chest, as if it were about to burst through. The fear of weightlessness hadn't yet faded, and what met my eyes was the familiar room layout. I glanced at the time. I had been reborn on the day my parents were kidnapped. In 5 minutes, the kidnappers would call, demanding that we prepare the ransom within an hour, or they would tear the ticket. I am the Bai family's daughter who had been missing for 18 years, returning to my parents' arms for less than a year. They were everything to me, no matter what. I couldn't let the tragedy of my previous life happen again. I quickly went downstairs to guard the phone, followed closely by my policeman brother, dressed in tactical gear and casual pants. Rita, why are you so nervous? Who are you trying to impress? Mom and Dad aren't here. Weren't they kidnapped by you? Brother Jack gave a hint of a mocking smile. At that moment, I was certain he had also been reborn. His expression seemed to say, "Stop struggling, it's useless." Without our parents, the scene we're acting out would end even sooner. In my last life, my brother was convinced that I had meticulously planned the kidnapping to vie for attention and gain our parents' focus. I didn't know where he got that absurd conclusion from. In this life, my brother decided to ignore my trap entirely. Rita, don't blame me for not warning you. Inciting a crime is still a crime. When you get caught, don't cry and beg me to bail you out. I wanted to say something, but as soon as I opened my mouth, the urgent phone ringing interrupted me. Each ring felt like a needle piercing my heart, but my brother seemed not to hear it at all. Before leaving, a trace of disdain flashed across his brows. Do whatever you want. I'm going to accompany Emma to bungee jumping. Anyway, they won't really get hurt. Don't bother me when it's not necessary. He didn't say this in my last life. Using years of accumulated criminal investigation skills, my brother quickly located the kidnappers' hideout. Within just an hour, he brought our parents back safely. That day, I was focused entirely on our frightened parents, completely unaware of the suspicion and anger hidden in my brother's eyes. Later, I was tied to the edge of the cliff, and only then did I realize the truth. During the rescue, the fake rich heiress Emma called him countless times. My brother didn't answer her, so she went bungee jumping alone and had an accident. At this moment, the phone ringing felt like a death warrant, making me anxious all over. I answered it, and the kidnapper's voice clearly reached my ears. 20 million. Prepare it within 2 hours, or your parents will die. I stared in horror. What? In my last life, wasn't it clearly only 10 million? Chapter 2. I tightly gripped the phone, cold sweat dripping down my face. It seemed that the reality of both lives was slightly different. The kidnapper's location might have changed. Originally confident, I suddenly began to panic. With a tearful plea, I begged, "Can you give me a little more time?" They hung up the phone immediately. I abruptly controlled my emotions, knowing that showing weakness to such desperados was useless. The immediate priority was to prepare the ransom and confirm their location. I quickly wrote down the information I knew from my previous life on a piece of paper. There were 2 kidnappers, both young men, and the kidnapping took place at one of their homes. The ransom was 10 million, to be placed in the 3rd trash bin at the south entrance of the train station. Before the kidnappers could collect the money, my brother had raided their hideout, saving both the money and my parents. Thinking of this, I immediately picked up the phone and dialed 110. I also contacted my father's good friend, Leo, who is a shareholder in the company, asking the finance department to withdraw the cash directly. Leo was as panicked as I was on the phone. "Call the police. Rita, I'll handle the money issue." Finally, a bit of peace settled in my heart. 2 minutes later, the local police arrived. My brother's colleague and good friend, David, walked in with a sour expression. "Rita, your brother just called me. Luckily, I'm nearby. Making a false report is illegal." All my courage and hope crumbled in that moment. Jack believed I was the mastermind behind the kidnapping, so he specifically sent his good friend to respond. His intention was to stop my unreasonable outburst. Without police force and no criminal investigation expert to bust the location, how could I break the deadlock? Unable to hold back my emotions, I fumbled the clues in my hands. Thinking of my parents being tortured by the kidnappers, I completely broke down and cried out loud, "Brother David, I'm not lying. I'm an adult, and I take responsibility for my actions. Please, I need the police's help. I need you to help me save my parents." I cried breathlessly, continuously checking the clock. Nearly 10 minutes had passed, and there wasn't much time left. David leaned against the sofa, nonchalantly scrolling through his phone. Seeing me cry, he showed no hint of pity. They say kids raised in orphanages are very cunning. Do you think crying can morally blackmail others? Your brother is right. Those not raised properly just don't work. Their hearts aren't in it. Emma is much more sensible than you. Emma shared my fate but not my fortune. She was adopted by our parents at 8 and was raised like a precious gem. Especially our brother, who had an almost pathological level of care for her. Even after both of us became adults, they still often slept together. The ticking of the clock pulled me back to reality. I forced myself to suppress the surging emotions inside and tried to calm down. "David," I solemnly called his name. "Since you've reported to the police, you have an obligation to resolve my report." Before I could finish speaking, David ruthlessly interrupted me with a mocking laugh. "You little blonde girl, what are you pretending to be so noble for here? Do you think just by returning to the Bai family you can control everything? To this family, you're like an outsider." His words felt like plunging into an ice pit. "Your brother told me that your parents don't love you that much. They often get your name and Emma's wrong. You schemed a lot at home to vie for attention, forcing Emma to move out." David casually ate from a fruit platter while belittling me. I knew these words weren't baseless. They were accumulated over time from my own brother. In their eyes, I was nothing but a scheming girl vying for attention. I stood in front of him again. But it didn't matter how he saw me. "What would make you believe me? My parents are in extreme danger right now. Missing the golden rescue time, can you take responsibility for that?" David paused his actions and stood up from the sofa. "Then report me, you little girl, like you deserve a lesson." Before he could finish, 2 officers in police uniforms stood at the door. "Is Rita here? We received a call to handle a case." My legs felt weak, and I nearly fell to the ground. My parents were finally going to be saved. Chapter 3. As soon as the officers arrived, David immediately went over to shake hands. "All colleagues here. I'm here to see Jack's sister." It was only then that I noticed David was dressed in plain clothes. Immediately after, he hurried toward the door, attempting to escape in a flash. But the 2 police officers quickly blocked his path. I stepped forward to report the current situation. "Officers, my parents have truly been kidnapped. I have a recording." The call I had specifically recorded on my phone finally came in handy. When the kidnapper's voice came through, David's face turned pale with fear. Jack clearly said they were actors. "He said you orchestrated all of this yourself." I snorted coldly. Too tired to argue with him, I began to slowly unfold the crumpled piece of paper in my hand, relying on the somewhat blurry fragments of memories from my past life. I carefully recalled every detail, rapidly organizing and piecing together the information in my mind. I finally thought of a convincing excuse that could directly provide clues from my previous life. "Officers, I can provide information on the suspects. They were seen near my home. They sound very similar. They asked me for directions at the time. I can't be completely sure." Soon, a sketch artist and listening devices were in place. I focused intently on describing the appearances of the 2 kidnappers. After comparing them with individuals with criminal records, results quickly emerged. They were two young men who had previously been imprisoned for robbery. One of them had rented an apartment under his real name, and the police immediately arranged a rescue mission. I sat on the sofa, feeling like I had just been pulled out of a pond. Cold sweat had soaked me to the bone. 20 minutes later, the police accompanying me received a report. "I'm sorry, Rita, we didn't find any trace of your parents at the scene, but we did find this. At the kidnapper's home, there were many secretly taken photos, including not only of my parents but also of me. They've been scoping the area for a long time. Don't worry, these two won't escape." My mind was about to explode. The worst thing I feared had finally happened. The kidnappers had changed the location where they were hiding the hostages. This meant that all my clues were now useless. David was on the side, calling my brother, even though he tried to keep his voice low. I could hear him clearly. "It's really a kidnapping. We have suspects now. Hurry back." On Jack's end, he actually started laughing heartily. His words seemed deliberately intended for me to hear. "Stop it. The bigger you play, the harder you'll fall. When the time comes and your parents lose face and disown you, don't cry, okay?" Fear and resentment from my previous life surged through me instantly. Even though he hated me, his sister whom he had only recently found. At times like this, I shouldn't even believe what others say. I was not at fault, and neither were my parents. They had carefully cared for their son for over 20 years. Yet now, to accompany a fake rich heiress, they had jeopardized their safety. If my parents knew, I don't know how heartbroken they would be. I felt it was unfair to them. As I wiped away the tears from the corners of my eyes, the landline at home suddenly rang loudly. The officer responsible for monitoring gave me a knowing look. My heart raced dramatically. The kidnappers had called again. Chapter 4. The officer responsible for monitoring gave me an okay hand signal. My entire body trembled as I picked up the phone. A nearby officer handed me a paper card. By time, I immediately took a deep breath, and despite my sobs, I began to speak. "I'm preparing the money. Please don't harm my parents." On the other end, the kidnapper first let out a disdainful laugh. "Then hurry up. You have 1 hour." I said, "If time runs out, I'll tear the deal." Another officer handed me a paper card. "Where should the money be sent? And after I send the money, where should I go to pick up my parents?" The kidnapper's tone was clearly impatient. "Send the money to the locker inside the station. Don't worry about your parents. Once the money is in place, they will return to you immediately." My temples throbbed violently, and the payment location was different from my previous life. I tried to talk as much as possible to help the monitoring officers locate the source. "Are my parents okay? Can I hear their voices?" The kidnapper spat out harshly and cursed. "You're so troublesome." Immediately, I heard my parents' helpless voices. "Rita, Daddy and Mommy can find you. There are no regrets in this life. Don't risk your life for us. Take care of yourself. Mom wants to tell you that Daddy and Mommy love you more than you can imagine and want to make up for it. It's just that sometimes we don't know how to express it." My father's aged voice came through. "Sweetie, Daddy regrets losing you when you were 2 years old. If I had the chance, I would apologize to you in person." As I opened my mouth, I choked, unable to speak complete sentences. I wanted to say that I didn't need their apologies. I just wanted them to be safe. "Please be patient and wait for me. I will definitely save them." The kidnapper interrupted the conversation first. He kicked me like he was kicking someone else. His words foul. "You old bastard. So much nonsense. Rich people are just pretentious. Hurry up and send the money, or I can't guarantee your parents will return home safely." After he hung up, everyone involuntarily looked at me and shook their heads. Without locating the position, the kidnappers used technology to block it. My anxiety and fear exploded once again. Countless pieces of information swirled chaotically in my mind. This money must be sent. At least it can ensure my parents' safety. I immediately took out my phone and called Leo. He agreed to help me raise the cash. But no matter how many times I tried to call, the phone wouldn't connect. As I was dialing that number for the nth time, my phone rang. My brother Jack's laughter came through clearly. "You've acted enough. It's time to end this. I instantly became alert. What did you tell Leo? Jack laughed very calmly. Of course I told him not to give you the money. That's 20 million, even if it's just acting. He wouldn't give it to you casually. I told Leo that you're just scheming. As soon as you return to the Bai family, you wanted to drain the assets. He won't listen to you. At that moment, all my hope vanished. I felt like a deflated balloon, completely losing the will to live. Without those 20 million, there was no chance my parents would survive. I had reviewed the case report from my previous life. Those two men had already taken lives. Naturally, they didn't care about a couple more. If the money wasn't in place, they would truly tear up the deal. The phone rang again, and the kidnapper's impatient voice pierced my heart like a sharp knife. If you don't send the money soon, I'll tear the deal right now. Chapter 5. An invisible pair of hands clenched my heart tightly. Beads of sweat rolled down my forehead like raindrops. The ticking of the clock pounded against my heart with each second. I took the paper card, my lips trembling. Time isn't up yet. We're withdrawing money from various banks. You're asking for too much. We need to go to more banks. The kidnapper laughed disdainfully. The Bai family has such a large empire, but you don't even have this much cash. I was so nervous that I couldn't dare to speak recklessly. In those few seconds, I suddenly heard the familiar sound of a train whistle in the background. The monitoring officer also noticed and signaled that I needed to buy more time. Let me hear your parents' voices again. I need to ensure their safety. The kidnapper's anger was evident. Do you really think you're a heiress? Everyone will coddle you. Final 30 minutes. If we don't see the money, you won't see your parents either. The call was disconnected, and the time was reduced to 30 minutes. As expected, reasoning with the kidnappers was impossible. The surroundings were in chaos, with helpful police officers assisting me in contacting banks to quickly obtain cash. Meanwhile, I bit my lip tightly, closed my eyes, and recalled the moment before he hung up. I was certain I heard it. The brief 2 seconds sounded like a ghostly wail carried through the hall. I immediately grabbed the monitoring officer beside me. Help me replay the recording. The last few seconds. Quickly! Everyone was startled by my request but complied and played the recording. Immediately, they heard that eerie wind sound at the end of the call. Like a ghost's howl, I suddenly stood up. I know where my parents are. Chapter 6. At first, the police officers didn't dare to trust me easily. After I presented concrete evidence, they immediately led a team to the scene. The orphanage where I had lived for 10 years was located next to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of the city. Trains hauling coal or timber passed by every day. The first one was at 6:10 a.m., then 10:30 a.m., and the latest at 8:30 p.m. The intervals were no more than 10 minutes apart. After verification, the times I provided matched perfectly. I was even more familiar with that abandoned factory. Every day we could go out to play. My friends and I would head there first. The factory was surrounded by concrete walls, but the north and south walls had 2 large holes running through them. Every time a train passed by, the fluctuating wind felt like the spirits of the damned, as if it could tear a person's soul from their body. My friends and I would scream and excitedly run against the wind. That was almost the only joy of my childhood. So I was absolutely certain that the kidnappers would be there. Rita, just stay at home and wait. Don't worry. We will definitely bring your parents back. I trusted the police's abilities, but I had to see my parents first. Otherwise, even if I stayed at home, I would be on edge. Every minute a torment. Officers, please take me there. My parents and I just reunited not long ago, and I really don't want to be separated from them again. As if persuaded by my plea, I was finally arranged into a police car. Sitting at the very back, the dark suburbs resembled an apocalyptic scene. To avoid alerting the kidnappers, we kept a great distance before getting out of the car. The patrol officers stealthily entered the area in the dark. Soon after, sounds of a struggle echoed, and one suspect was completely subdued and brought out. I broke free from the officers' control, ignoring their protests, and sprinted toward the scene. I had to be the first to see my parents and confirm they were safe. Everything in the darkness was invisible. Suddenly, a burst of car headlights illuminated my path from behind. My eyes darted urgently. my heart about to leap out of my throat. Dad! Mom! Finally, I saw my parents in a corner of the factory, their clothes tattered. I rushed over and embraced them, tears streaming uncontrollably, blurring my vision, but I still saw the same excited expressions on my parents' faces. Dad and Mom, I finally found you. In this life, I had finally saved you with my own strength. The lingering fear after the ordeal and the joy of reunion made me tremble all over. Just as I was about to take the rag from my parents' hands, I saw Dad glaring at me from behind. I turned around and saw another suspect holding large pliers, his cunning eyes gleaming from the darkness. You dared to call the police? Then die together. The moment the pliers dropped, I didn't feel any pain. Instead, everything turned blood red. Dad! Chapter 7. When my dad was brought onto the ambulance, he was already unconscious, still calling out my brother's name. My mom also passed out from excessive fright. As the red lights in the operating room turned on, I stood alone outside. My brother Jack and Emma walked up to me, holding hands. What's going on? Normally you just cause trouble, but how did you even hurt Dad? I looked at him coldly, too exhausted to argue with him. I simply said in a detached manner, "The kidnappers did it." My brother Jack immediately started jumping in place. "The actor you found still dared to hurt someone. What kind of people are we? The Bai family? Dad and Mom really let you back in their minds like fools." Emma looked very pleased beside me. "You've gone too far. I told you you'd eventually be the one to screw things up. What's biological and what's not? You're no better than I, the adopted one." Jack placed his hand gently on her face, looking very affectionate, showing no concern for our parents at all. Even now, the two of them still believed I was acting and kept humiliating me. A police officer responsible for handling the case approached. "Rita, please sign the statement. Don't worry too much. Your uncle will be fine." Jack snatched the statement from me, and the officer was taken aback to see him. "Jack, where have you been? Do you know what your parents went through? Your sister almost got hurt too." Jack read the statement but still looked incredulous. "Not again. You're going to say you found actors? This one is actually a colleague you see every day." I stood up and glared at Jack. "You better pray that my parents are okay. Otherwise, I'm not done with you." All the accumulated anger and resentment from both lives exploded. Jack clearly showed a hint of panic but quickly forced himself to appear calm again. Emma stood in front of him, trying to appear brave. "Don't blame him. If you want to blame someone, blame me anyway. Dad and Mom are too stubborn to talk to me. So in the end, you're the one getting scolded." Emma looked determined. "How can you compete with me? I think you were deliberately abandoned when you were 2 years old. You're a bastard that Dad and Mom didn't want." I couldn't hold back any longer. I stood up and slapped her. Smack! A sharp sound echoed, and everyone present was stunned. "You say I'm okay, that I don't hold grudges, but Dad and Mom would never intentionally abandon me." I had to thank the kidnappers. In the face of life and death separation, the wall between my parents and me had finally collapsed. I understood their guilt for losing me and their deep, unspoken love. Jack, furious, shielded Emma in front of him. "You're just..." He stopped mid-sentence, as if recalling the consequences of his words. "The surgery is over. Family members, please come in." Jack and I both rushed toward the doctors. Chapter 8. Perhaps by the grace of heaven, the blood clots in my dad's brain were removed, and he woke up a week later. The first thing he did upon waking was to call a lawyer to amend his will. We stood in a line at the doorway, waiting, while Jack was visibly agitated. "Mom, why is Dad acting like he treats us like outsiders?" After the last incident, my mom's attitude toward Jack had also changed. She seemed sulky, never showing a pleasant face. "I let you wait because I said so. He is your dad. Do you still want to be his master?" Jack hit the ground running, then gave up and couldn't argue, so he ran to the side to smoke a cigarette. Emma quickly stepped forward to make amends. "Mom, the lakeside villa is too cold. Can I move back?" She didn't mention what I almost forgot. A month ago, Emma falsely accused me of drugging the desserts our family made, causing her to have gastroenteritis. She claimed I was vying for attention and ostracizing her. refusing to live in the same space as her. She wanted to move out and insisted on registering a villa in her name by demanding it from our parents. Now that she had the house, she was trying every possible way to get it back. Such a good thing doesn't happen in this world. My mom's expression didn't look pleased at all. I can't make decisions on this. Dad has the final say. However, Emma seemed determined after hearing this, looking at me with obvious provocation. I pretended not to see her. I had experienced similar situations too many times. When I first returned to the Bai family, I appeared somewhat clumsy due to my inability to adapt to the high society life, and Rita constantly ostracized me. She said I was unintelligent, lacked the upbringing of a rich girl, and couldn't hold my own. But my academic performance was better than hers, and I attended a key national engineering university. I could cook and take care of myself well, often making various small desserts to cheer up our parents. In my spare time, I also volunteered, helping autistic children and stray animals. In contrast, Emma, the pampered heiress, had no real abilities besides a bad temper. Most of the time, she had to rely on our brother for support. I watched Jack, who looked worried from a distance. Now, it seemed her support wasn't as solid as before. After about 2 hours, the lawyer finally pushed the door open. Jack was the first to rush in and collapse onto the hospital bed. Dad, I really had something come up that day, which is why I couldn't save you. I'm so sorry. I regret it so much. A flicker of displeasure crossed Emma's face as she also leaned over the hospital bed. Dad, you're okay now. You really scared me to death. These two were quite good at pretending to be filial sons. Emma even feigned tears on the spot. Unfortunately, my dad was as clear-headed as if he had a new brain. Waving his hand, everyone, sit down, stop surrounding me and nagging. Both of them froze for a moment. In the past, my dad would have been moved to tears, staging a warm fatherly scene of filial piety. Now, he was as calm as an outsider. I stepped forward and poured a glass of warm water for my dad. He took it to soothe his throat. His complexion softened considerably. You all know what happened yesterday. If it weren't for Rita, I might not have survived. My mom immediately wrapped her arms around my shoulders, and I comfortingly patted her. It's okay. It's all over now. My brother immediately jumped in to argue. She was just answering the phone and buying time. It wasn't just about talking. My dad's face darkened again. Where were you when I was kidnapped? What did you do? Jack was left speechless. Emma, unable to behave herself, jumped in. Dad, I was trying to hurry back. It was all Jack insisting that Dad is a good person with fate on his side, so there would definitely be no problem. Saying such things at this moment was like stepping on a landmine. Only someone who had been kidnapped would know that it was truly a life and death situation. Jack opened his mouth to explain. I thought Rita was acting. She always loved vying for attention with Emma. I thought she was trying to deceive me into coming home. In this rebirth, Jack's misunderstanding of me was still profound. He always believed I was deceiving him. I saw my dad's eyebrows knit together. His anger without fury was intimidating. Who would joke with their parents' lives? Jack, you think Rita is as clueless as you are. You two have been bullying her together, and she's tolerated it because she didn't want us to worry. When will you understand your sister's sincere intentions? When Jack heard the word sister, it was as if a switch in his body had been flipped. He suddenly stood up. My only sister is Emma. The next second, a sharp slap landed on his cheek. My mom, harboring anger for a long time, stunned everyone present. Then you and she can get out of the Bai family together. Chapter 9. My brother was completely stunned by the slap and only regained consciousness after a long moment. Mom, what are you saying? I'm your biological son. My mom's gaze pierced deep into Jack's heart. So what if I'm your biological son? What were you doing in a critical moment? You were out hiking with your sister. Do you know that Dad and I almost died? After speaking, my mom was so agitated she could barely breathe. I supported her, patting her back, and it took a while for her to catch her breath. You've been given the house, and after raising you for so many years, we don't seek anything in return. Emma, from now on, stay away from the Bai family as much as possible. After speaking, my mom started crying herself. I knew she must have thought about this decision countless times in her heart. Jack looked helplessly towards my dad, receiving only an angry glare in return. Dad, Emma was raised by you and Mom. How can a wild child like her, who grew up outside, replace Emma? Jack was too agitated, realizing he had said the wrong thing and cursed our parents. It was already too late. My dad looked at him with a face full of disappointment. You've always been rebellious and willful since you were little. We sent you to the police academy to toughen you up, thinking you'd grow up, but you just kept going astray. As soon as my dad spoke, Jack trembled completely. He must not have expected that both kidnappings in my 2 lives were real. Originally, he wanted to laugh at me, see me get exposed and get scolded by our parents, or get caught for making a false report. This would somehow offset the hatred from Emma's falling into the cliff. Now everything was messed up, and Jack had lost his previous arrogance. Instead, he feigned pity and apologized to our parents, Dad and Mom. I was wrong. It was truly unintentional. My dad interrupted him. All you wanted was for Rita to leave the Bai family. You wanted to mix with Emma openly and properly. The thing I fear most is Rita stealing your status and affection. Jack was completely dumbfounded. His inner thoughts were fully exposed, standing naked in front of everyone. Don't think that Emma and you have anything going on that I don't know about, even if you don't share blood relations. That's morally corrupt. It turned out Dad knew everything. The affair between a son and an adopted daughter, if exposed, would be a family disgrace. We and Emma are mutually in love. A perfect match made in heaven. Jack was still stubbornly arguing, watching my dad's anger continuously rise. I quickly went over to adjust the 4-drip speed for him. Dad, please calm down. The doctor said not to get too excited. My dad patted my hand, with a loving gaze towards me. His words pointed at Jack. The one who should apologize the most is Rita. Do you think I didn't know what happened 18 years ago? I felt as if I was frozen, startled by an instinctive thought in my mind. Jack was also scared. His lips quivered as he said Rita, and his breathing became rapid. My dad sighed deeply and pulled me into his arms, while my mom began to sob softly. Rita, you are not a child that Dad and Mom don't want, nor are you the mischievous one who got lost. You were deliberately lost by your brother when he took you out. My mom's sobbing was heart-wrenching. After you came into our lives, your brother has been desperately vying for attention. He hates that we pay too much attention to you. It's all Dad and Mom's fault. They could only let him take you that day because of some incident. It was Dad and Mom's negligence. My face turned pale instantly. The truth was like a bomb, exploding in the softest part of my chest. Before, I still felt a bit guilty about Jack's self-blame, but now it was completely wiped away. Jack lowered his head and suddenly laughed loudly. So you all knew. Ha, ha ha ha. After all these years, this matter has finally been discovered. I just hate her sticking to you all the time. She's a clueless kid who doesn't understand anything. She was abandoned on the street in a flash. My anger was like a fierce beast. I almost rushed to Jack in a second, roaring at him. I didn't understand anything back then. What right did you have to decide my fate? Emma firmly blocked me, still defending him. He was just a kid. Who would hold a child accountable for mistakes? Don't be so pretentious. Jack was already 10 years old at that time. He wasn't immature. He was purely malicious. He didn't want another person to take away his affection. By the time Emma came, he was almost an adult. My mom held me as I was about to collapse. Sweetheart, all of this is over. We will never separate from you again. Seeing me so distressed, my dad's anger also rose. These are the facts as they are. Your mom and I have decided that when we grow old, all the family property will be inherited solely by Rita. You and Emma, go wherever you want. Don't come back to the Bai family anymore. Chapter 10. Jack couldn't believe what he saw before him. He knelt again in front of the hospital bed. Dad, I'm also your biological son. If you don't want me to be with Emma, I'll make her leave now. Upon hearing that all the property was left to me, Jack panicked. He was even willing to sacrifice his sister whom he had so carefully nurtured. Emma stood her ground and also knelt in front of the hospital bed. Dad, I didn't mean to embarrass you. My brother forced me to be with him. He made me move out to threaten you into buying a house. He taught me to frame Rita to gain sympathy. Emma shed 2 clear tears as she spoke, clearly more skillful. Jack could only glare at her angrily. Dad, I'm also a member of the Bai family. I've lived here for over 10 years. You can't kick me out. I should have a share of the family fortune too. Seeing that his beloved sister was also trying to seize the family property, Jack's face suddenly changed. You have no blood relation to the Bai family at all. So why? Raising you for so long was already a favor. You don't deserve to inherit the family fortune. He lost control while reprimanding Emma, just like he used to reprimand me. My dad scolded him sternly. You don't deserve it either. You blamed Rita for the hatred from your previous life, causing your biological sister to fall off a cliff. You have no blood ties in your heart. Upon hearing this, both Jack and I were stunned. It seemed that after my dad's head was hit hard, he gained some memories from his previous life. He knew about Jack killing me. Seeing that all of Jack's misdeeds were exposed, he decided to go all out and threaten our parents. Leaving the house empty-handed is impossible. Unless you give me a large sum of money, only then can I consider supporting you in your old age. He stood up, looking at me disdainfully. This guy is completely unreliable. When you're old, you still have to depend on me. My dad directly cut off his thoughts. Tonight, you have to move out of the villa, or I'll have the bodyguards carry you out. After ruining your biological sister twice, how can I expect someone like you to take care of me in my old age? You'd better thank the heavens if you don't push me off the cliff. Jack's gaze gradually darkened. I was afraid he might do something out of the ordinary, so I held a thermos to shield my parents. I will take good care of Dad and Mom. I will never become an ungrateful brat like you. Even though Jack was furious, he didn't dare to cause trouble in the hospital in broad daylight. He left the hospital room with the words, "You'll regret this." Emma didn't follow him. She continued to kneel on the ground, pretending to be pitiful. Dad, Mom, look at me. I'm Emma. I'm your daughter. It was all my brother's idea to move out. I promised to stop associating with my brother. Can you let me move back to the Bai family? My mom only said one word. Get out. Emma's thoughts were already transparent. She had been poor since childhood and was afraid, thinking that since she couldn't inherit the family business, being a young madam was not bad. She and Jack were both scoundrels. After they left, the whole world became quiet. My mom and I stayed by the hospital room. Luckily, Dad was recovering well. A week later, I picked up Dad and we went home. Later, on one occasion when Dad drank too much, he asked me if I hated Jack, if I hated him for causing my death in the previous life. I shook my head. I believed that he truly loved Emma, just not deeply enough. In front of Emma, he was willing to abandon me, but in front of the family fortune, he was willing to give up everything. Jack was such a realistic person. Chapter 11. 6 months later, I successfully graduated from university and received an offer from a prestigious foreign institution. I was torn between pursuing further studies abroad and inheriting the family business. My parents firmly supported my decision to go abroad, saying that I had endured hardships for the first 20 years of my life. All they could do to make up for it was to fulfill all my desires and let me do whatever I wanted. My dad showcased his still robust biceps. Dad can still guard the family business for you. It won't be too late for you to take over after you graduate. So, I chose to pursue my master's degree abroad. In the days leading up to my departure, I couldn't wait to cling to my parents. Later, my parents took me to change my name, and I finally had my own surname. Looking at the name Rita Bai on my ID card, tears welled up in my eyes as I repeatedly caressed those characters. My mom, feeling sorry for me having endured so much, preemptively transferred the family's real estate to my name. I refused to take it, but she said it was to cut off Jack's ambitions. Jack was indeed restless. He occasionally sent things our parents liked to the house, but they were always thrown out. Later, he started calling me, but his calls were always hung up by the butler or the nanny. Eventually, Jack began to harass me. He cursed me as a devil from birth who would harm others, saying he wished he had drowned me in the lake when I was 2 years old. Unfortunately, no matter how malicious his words were, they couldn't stir any emotions in me. The already minimal bond between us had completely dissipated. After blocking Jack, I lived a few peaceful days, But then Emma began to harass me again. Whenever I answered the phone, she would burst into tears. "Rita, don't hang up, please. Help me." She was always the best at pretending to be pitiful. Although I didn't hang up, I only wanted to see what scene she was acting out. "Rita, I'm pregnant. I've been kicked out by Jack and I don't have a penny. Can you help me?" She became increasingly agitated, even crying out loud. "Jack, that bastard, got fired and has been drinking at home. And he stole the house too. I'm really desperate." I let out an "oh, that's why you should go to the police." After saying that, I hung up the phone. Later, Rita still found my parents and confessed her pregnancy. My parents, fearing she might lose hope, agreed to give both of them some money as long as they lived well and raised their child. Jack agreed. On the wedding day, none of us three attended. We all knew in our hearts that Jack only agreed to the marriage for the money. Less than a month after their wedding, Emma had a miscarriage. Jack probably saw the child as a burden or was driven by his primal instincts. After drinking too much, he beat Emma into a miscarriage. As a result, he went to jail for rehabilitation. My parents didn't come to his aid and focused solely on me. Every item I needed while studying abroad was carefully selected by them. The night before I left, I suddenly had a change of heart. "Dad, Mom, I think I shouldn't go after all. Although the competition is intense in the country, I can still try my best." My mom's index finger tapped my forehead, a strong form of control from the older generation. "No nonsense. You can go because you're excellent. You must seize this opportunity." My dad also watched me smile from the side. "If you miss home, you can come back anytime. It's not like you can't afford a plane ticket." Even though she said this, the inner reluctance still tormented me. Early the next morning, I cried in my bed. My eyes were constantly red. At the security check, I hugged my parents goodbye. "Don't stay up late. Don't eat junk food. And take your medicine on time." My dad nodded. My mom patted my shoulder. "Safe travels." As I stepped out, I looked back and, in a daze, seemed to see the Rita from my previous life waving at me through the crowd. Her lips moved as if saying, "This time, make sure to be truly happy." I nodded and silently vowed, "I will."